I was almost going to shave my head, Jack, so I could be as cool as you, but I decided to. But I've got the young man's fade on the side there, so I can be cool.
Yeah, mate, I'm getting married to a German. I had to go the drill sergeant cut.
Yeah, you do look very Lieutenant Dan.
Yeah, hopefully the earlier years of Lieutenant Dan.
God, listen to our old men greasy
It
chests.
is screwed up.
What have you been up to, Jack? Signing bank docs?
House settles today. But we lost rugby on the weekend, so I'll just be supporting this week.
Can't believe you lost, big fella.
It was a good game, like I was saying.
How did it happen? Like, just...
Right, so it was actually, since we lost our 9-10, we haven't had a good game of, like a fluid game of rugby since. And that was like 4 games ago. So we came out of the gates, did everything we said we were going to do, 7 points up, like absolutely playing the best game we played all year. And then they got a lucky try and a few lucky 3-pointers. We were down, 2 points at halftime, but absolutely crushed them. And then the second half, we just couldn't get any flow. Like just every time we were trying to piece a few combos together, penalty against us. And then to the point, like last 10 minutes, like he gave 2 yellow cards and wouldn't give us a penalty try. Instead, it was obstruction on one. The sideline ref called a penalty try, but he dismissed it. And like you watch the review and it is just blatantly a try. But yeah, so like it was one of those games where we didn't win, but everyone came off and we're like, bloody hell, like everyone looked at each other, like we all played for each other, put in a shift. That was a fun game of rugby. We just didn't, like things just didn't go away.
That sucks when it's not reflected on the scoreboard.
Yeah, but like, so this is the worst our club's done in probably like 10 years that we haven't made a grand final straight. Like we finished third, but everyone was like, everyone's getting around each other. Everyone's like we left stuff out there, but like we played well. Like it was actually a good outcome despite the result.
That's important generally to judge the process and the effort and not the outcome. You got to put more effort into the process rather than the outcomes. Otherwise life becomes rather difficult.
Yeah.
That's all right, Jack. I mean, is there as much respect for you if you're a winner? Maybe. But look, still good.
Yeah.
Don, your microphone's a bit different to normal. It sounds echoey.
Oh, that's because it's actually in a totally different area. Whoops.
Yeah.
Is that any better?
Yeah, that's better.
And Aaron, you've been wedding prepping?
Oh, I'd like to say yes. I've been laid up. I spent all the Saturday in bed. Then Marin just fell hard. So we had plans for the weekend, catch up with friends and different people in town, and we cancelled it all. But wedding is prepped. Like the catering's sorted. We've got the alcohol ready. People have said they're coming. Surely that's like all we need. What about you, Don? What was your weekend like?
I don't think I've mentioned. Have I mentioned that I'm doing a half Ironman?
No, I don't think like not in the last 5 minutes anyway.
Has it hasn't come up in any conversations? Well, I went off to the doctor who gave me a big lecture on potential of heart failure from the virus that I seem to still be carrying if I push myself too hard, and the combination of other things. So I took 2 days off and then I'm feeling pretty good. So that's
bloody solid.
Good to have some rest. 2 weeks out now.
2 weeks out.
Fuck, so we've got another 2 weeks of hearing about it every day.
Oh, you think it's going to stop once he's done it?
You just had the medal around this.
Oh, I can see him bringing the bike trainer to the wedding and just at reception, cycling away.
When I was going back to the doctor, Libby did say, you don't need a bloody doctor, you need a psychologist. I'm like,
well, that is true, but that's unrelated.
That's a separate issue. But no, look, you got to have something to work towards. This is mine. Well, let's get into it. So just a bit of a recap. This is slightly funny, slightly serious. I don't know which way to take it, but we'd previously spoken about Canva buying Leonardo. And when it was first announced, there was no details announced. It was all kept under wrap. It was all hush hush. And then a couple of days later, it emerged how the deal was structured, and there was a few questions around it. And an article by Nick Bonyhady from the AFR said, you'd think any savvy investor that almost quadrupled their money over 18 months would be shouting it from the rooftops, but not the country's largest venture capital fund, that being Rick Baker and Nikki Savak's Blackbird Ventures. That firm instead is on a mole hunt, taking a leaf from English football Wayne Rooney's wife, Colleen, to try and work out who gave a rundown of its investment in AR startup Leonardo to this publication. Rooney's wife, Colleen, famously deduced who was leaking information about her private life to Rupert Murdoch's son by putting a series of fake stories on her Instagram, checking who had viewed them. Spoiler, it was a rival wag, Rebecca Vardy, giving rise to the UK's Wagatha Christie scandal. Blackbird, meanwhile, has been grousing widely about the leak and so is sending out different versions of its investor updates. That all could be an innocent technical error, but there's a reason Blackbird might be playing Inquisitor. Canva co-founder Cliff Obrecht, known as Cliff Mongrel in the business when he's determined to get something done, likes tight control of his deals. No doubt he's displeased of the news that one escaped his command. So that's could be an administrative error of accidentally sending different updates out to different shareholders. I tend not to think so.
I don't think so. It's interesting. Going back to the outcome versus the behavior, like the opening of that article around Blackbird should be happy. It's a great outcome, but the behavior, and I guess what they're worried about here is that trust. And there's trust with information in the good times, but then also knowing that we can trust who's in the tent during the bad times too.
Yeah, I have empathy. I must admit we're not anywhere near that scale yet, but if we're sharing stuff inside the tent and then people start behaving in that manner, I too would be livid, and I too would be probably trying to work out who is not in the tent, who can't be trusted, and who should be ejected. At the same time, humans are humans. This is the game. So it's probably how do you balance your energy? But yeah, there's nothing makes you more paranoid than when you suspect people around you that you trust can't be trusted.
Yeah, totally agree. Humans are humans. These things happen. It's kind of expected, but you would hope the people in your tent are trustworthy. Like some stuff I did before, like in intelligence, they had obviously like an internal team that would monitor information and making sure that information wasn't being shared. And they would have systems that would automatically change one word in documents. And then so it would, when something was sent out, there was traceability of who got sent what just by changing a different word in every document.
Wow. James Bondish.
Such a simple tool, but it's so easy then to identify the source of where information got shared.
Jack, is it justified, or is it they're sweating the small stuff and shouldn't worry?
I think it's justified. Like it's a simple thing. When we push out updates, there's a clear heading at the top, like confidential, sensitive. We expect that it doesn't get passed on because we're trying to be transparent with our update. And then if you're passing it on, it's just breaking the trust. I can understand.
What I don't understand is what's going through an LP's mind who has like a vested interest in things working out. Let's say that there's not confidential information that's going to harm the company. At very least, what are they seeking to embarrass? Are they like draining energy from people? Like, what, apart from being a dickhead, like, what are you trying to get out of it? I guess.
Is it just total naivety? I don't know. Yeah.
I once suspected somebody was accessing my emails and I set a trap and found that they were, which led to an interesting little case. So yeah, it's not fun when you're in those positions.
Well, Don, you can cut this out, but was that an employee or was it like a competitor?
You haven't heard the story?
It's a good one.
No,
yeah. I know this is transparent VC, but I might keep that. I'll talk to you after, Jack.
Sounds good.
So anyway, if you're an LP or an investor, don't be a dick.
I got to say, our investors are really good at this, like picking up the phone and asking, hey, are you okay if I share X, Y, Z with, and they're very specific about who with. So, but it's always, the unknown unknowns that can come back to bite you.
Yeah. Entrepreneurialism needs a healthy dose of paranoia anyway. We don't need external additional injections of paranoia to
we have enough
to drain more energy. Yeah. Now, another theme that we've been talking about, but this is related to an individual. The VC community in Australia continues to shrink. Jessie Wu announced that she departed Afterwork Ventures, which was quite a surprise.
Yeah, I was surprised by this. And then reading her post and what she wrote and where she's got, like for me, I was super interested what she's identified as the biggest opportunity for her and how it correlates back to founder communication, founder messaging, storytelling, which we talk about all the time. Like, Don, how many times do you help founders come back to the fundamentals of being able to clearly articulate what they're doing? So it's good validation that Jessie sees that same challenge for founders. But yeah, I was surprised to see her leave.
Not mentioned in any of the posts, but it's happening across the industry. Like small emerging VCs with subscale funds find it hard to pay any money.
Yeah.
Like, I think the last Afterwork fund was 20 million in the article or something that I read. So if you're getting 2% of 20 million, last time I checked, that's 400,000. You're going to pay for an AFSL, and you're going to pay for insurance, and you're going to pay for overheads and marketing and everything else. And if there's 4 partners, 3 partners, like it's a hard slog. And we're just seeing it, like Gary Williams from Tractor as well. He moved on from Tractor. Again, the messaging is always there's a new and better opportunity, but underlying we're in an industry that is shrinking, that's in a bit of a winter. And interesting that Gary, with his group, similar kind of theme around curating content focused around different things. And so this content, this messaging, this founder communications seems to be a niche that people are seeing. Wish them the absolute best. Now, speaking of personnel changes, Go1, the Queensland unicorn, has had another personal change. Vu stepped down from the company, 3 months ago?
Yeah, it would have been about that. Yep.
Maybe more. And now it's been announced that Andrew Barnes, who's led the technology company as chief executive since he founded the business in 2015 with friends Vu Tran and Chris Seigland and Chris Hood. And what's occurring is that in 2021, Go1 decided to adopt a dual CEO structure. We'll get to that in a minute. And effectively, Andrew Barnes and Chris Seigland became co-chief executives. Now what's happening is Andrew is stepping down and Chris is becoming the sole CEO. Andrew said it really simplifies things, both internally and externally. It's really clear who is steering the ship. Chris is coming in as the sole CEO and will allow the business to move really quickly, and I'll continue to focus on the long-term landscape for the company. Yeah.
Well, I definitely agree with it. Really simplifies things and makes it clear to the market who's steering the ship.
Have I ever mentioned before how much I hate co-CEOs?
Do we have a case where it's been successful? Like, as in long term? The boys here have done remarkably well to this point.
At least they acknowledge one of the core issues, right? If you just reverse what he says, it really simplifies things, being sole CEO. So the opposite of that, it complicates things when there's dual, both internally and externally. Yes, who's the boss here? And it's clear who's steering the ship. Yeah, it's difficult. What's the saying? No one can have two masters. What inevitably is occurring, though, even when people adopt the co-CEO thing, they're not really co-CEOs. One is dealing more externally and one is dealing more internally. It was the same with Atlassian. You have a look at when it was announced with Farquhar and what's described. They're actually splitting the roles internally and externally. But what starts to happen over time is there becomes too much conflict. Things start to slow down. It just doesn't work long time, and organizational structure needs to perfectly match what your mission and vision is. And I just never see it work out.
When I first read this, I feel like Vu had communicated for a while that his interest was starting to shift. But yeah, for Andrew, I'm a bit more surprised. And then I was starting to question, why didn't they time it as one announcement and make the move together? Now, maybe that's strategic. Maybe there was a very deliberate reason for that. But that was just my initial reaction is there more going on behind the scenes? And there usually is. But
well, if they're getting ready for an IPO, which is what the article says, the article goes on to say, with no plans to raise further capital, Mr. England said Go1 was in the process of appointing independent board members as part of a potential ASX or US listing. He said there was no time frame set for its IPO plans. So, getting prepped.
Yeah. And the nature of an IPO business being quite different to what they've enjoyed to date. It does require a recommitment of the founders to make sure they want to be on that train.
This conversation has also reminded me that I never actually released the session Vu had at my place earlier the year, which is in the production line. I think one of the other things to call out is, notwithstanding another experiment on co-CEOs demonstrates it's not ideal. I think it's worked here the best that it possibly could work here, because actually this group of people have incredible trust and respect in each other. They were friends before Go1. They had businesses before Go1. When you listen to Vu talk about his co-founders, it's a group of people that prioritize the whole, that actually can get over themselves and prioritize what's good for the company and have very respectful conversations. And that was something that came out very much in that session with Vu at my place.
Yeah, definitely. They're a close crew. They spend a lot of time together outside of the business as well. And they always had that mantra of kind of friends first. But what comes up is very high trust and respect in that co-founding group.
Yeah.
I love consuming anything Vu puts out. Like I wish he just keeps putting more content out, because every time he does, it's like we always read it. It's always in our inbox.
Yeah, I don't know his exact position, but it smells sometimes a bit of the kind of content you can put out sometimes when you've got fuck you money. You don't actually need to worry too much about what everybody else thinks.
Yeah. Go1 is such a good story for Queensland. And I love, like, they're based out of Logan. Like, it's such a good story.
Yeah, absolutely. This article mentioned that they've raised over 400 million from various investors, but one of the early investors that isn't mentioned was actually Lane via Blue Sky, was one of the very early supporters. And so that, yes, they brought bigger checks of capital later in that journey, but it was the Queensland ecosystem that supported them early on. 1013 as well through, or was that pre 1013?
Was it directly? It was Steve with his family office transition level investments.
Well, success leaves clues. Teams that can maintain high trust and respect, strong alignment of vision and mission tend to win out. Now moving to a bit of local capital raising in the Australian ecosystem, a company called LoveHeart AI, which is an edtech for early learning and childcare, has raised 2.3 million in a seed round. This article in Startup Daily by Simon Thompson says early childhood edtech LoveHeart AI has raised 2.3 million in a seed round for its super intelligent aid for educators. The raise was backed by OIF Ventures and Scalata. LoveHeart was founded in 2022 by Himal Randenia, who used the proceeds from his first venture, Project Academy, to buy and run several early childhood education centres. As any parent who's flicked through the child's daybook knows, educators put a lot of effort into tracking the growth and learning of their young charges, but the administrative burden is also a struggle amid caring for kids. Enter LoveHeart, which uses AI to turn a 30 to 60 minute summative assessment into a 3 to 5 minute job by translating text observations and voice notes into letters and reports. The result saves on average 4.2 hours a week for educators, giving them more time to focus on nurturing young minds. I actually have some personal experience with this product. We looked at this in the family office with the childcares. So to give some context, we have the national curriculum and the national quality standards that you effectively have to implement in your childcare. Not only that, when a child does something, you need to be able to try and guide them like any educator would. And so you're pulling from other material that you may have developed internally. And what then is expected of educators is they have to create these war and peace reports, and this happened, and so I decided to do this. And the reality is educators are administrators. And the more time I've spent in the childcare industry, I lament how painful it's become. I don't know when they get time to actually educate. I don't know when they get time to nurture the children. And so tools like this absolutely make a lot of sense. We then looked at it and at the time, it was, okay, so another platform we've got to implement. And at the same time, a new platform that managed everything on a vertical basis, from the parent app, the rostering, the management of the center, and it had inbuilt AI that took the national quality standards and did everything LoveHeart was doing. And so we then looked at it and said, even if this is, let's say, a bit better because it's a specific app, having a separate app that requires separate training, separate implementation, there's all sorts of IP issues, data security, blah, 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 a whole nother thing that the IT people have to get their head around. A single vertical solution that includes this functionality is ultimately the direction that we went. And now what we're finding is other childcare center management platforms are now adding in this kind of functionality to create that one-stop shop approach.
Yeah, this has been a real conversation point for us recently, like the what we're seeing in horizontal SaaS products being kind of eaten by and beaten by the vertical SaaS that's deeply integrated. It's industry specific. And it's not just that the product solves more problems and takes away more of those heartaches of all the different platforms. But for the business itself to be able to have really focused, targeted messaging directed at one industry with one language through a common marketing channel, like the efficiencies they gain in terms of capturing market share as well, it is noticeably different. So it's interesting where this is heading. And I think we've been talking about safety culture versus some of the other pitches we've been seeing recently that are in some ways going head to head with safety culture, but by going deep in a vertical and being more integrated. And I think for me, it comes back to the 7 powers, like to create something that's really sticky with a high switching cost, that's deeply integrated into workflows, that's integrated across the entire stack of the business. That gets quite compelling.
I think just to add some comments there, like Don, I suppose if you had a CRM that didn't have this feature, this is where something like LoveHeart AI is perfect, because a center manager can get the credit card out and automatically pay $10 a month and they've got the platform. But I suppose here, the CRM you guys already use and everyone was used to, like, offered that. So I suppose when you look at a market, if there are players that don't offer it, there's still an opportunity to attack it. And I think, like, speaking to you, you said you guys had actually previously jumped to the new CRM, and you could do that because there's 15 childcares. But if you're G8 and there's 500 childcares, that's very problematic. So there could be then 500 center managers all getting a subscription to LoveHeart AI. And there's probably a decent time window, because you can assume that the devs, like the roadmap, they're not even looking at this little AI tool, right? Like, they've got bigger things to look at.
Yeah, I think that's partly right. We were on the old crappy platform, so it was just good timing that LoveHeart AI came in, which effectively opened the eyes to this potential, and we were about to go down that path when the verticalized solution came across our desk as well, that had LoveHeart AI type functionality in it, and then it also had AI scheduling functionality in it. It meant that we could get rid of the separate parent app. I think we got rid of like 5 apps all in one. So it all just happened at the same time. I think you might be right with a G8, except G8, a G8 has big internal IT teams that like to centralize and control, and they like to develop their own stuff. But ultimately, yes, in the short term, horizontal, very specific feature solutions like this get some traction. My concern is the long term, right? Durability, that if this kind of functionality becomes par for the course in the industry and LoveHeart AI doesn't then verticalize quickly, and then their functionality can be inbuilt into other platforms like it's demonstrated it can be, how does LoveHeart AI durability? It's got to go and build all of the center manager functions that others have already spent tens of millions of dollars building just to get to the par for the course, right? Versus the holistic center manager to run a center. You find yourself a developer, you add that in, next minute you've got the same functionality.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how LoveHeart AI go.
Yeah, you and I were talking about it yesterday, Aaron, this vertical versus horizontal. I just see it everywhere now.
Yeah, that's been festering since the combo yesterday. And it's interesting because we talk about, for founders, don't necessarily have a huge initial TAM, have focus and later tilt. Is it the case that, yeah, if you're going highly integrated, deep, like a deep vertical play, it's smaller TAM, will there be the opportunity to tilt? I find it's an interesting thought at the moment. It's definitely red car syndrome. I'm seeing this horizontal versus vertical consistently showing up.
In one of the episodes of Harry Stebbings 20 VC, he's invested in it's a payments business for ethnic restaurants.
Okay.
Ethnic restaurants in countries that are not their origin. And the business model is he will have a Chinese salesperson in Italy going to talk to all of the Chinese restaurants in Italy about the specific payment platform that they have for Chinese restaurants. The thesis being is people like to buy from people that they align with. So when you're in Italy and someone comes to you speaking Chinese to actually have a conversation about your business and what you can solve, their thesis is automatically that's going to connect And then because this is specifically built for certain languages and certain things in certain markets, it's incredibly niche. And that's their business model going up against all of the big behemoths.
That's phenomenal. I hadn't heard that one. I need to check that out. But this is where founders often counter this, right? With, well, but I'm solving this very specific problem, and anyone who experiences that problem across all these markets, industries, everything, and that their counter is, well, I can use consistent language across that. But no, because the nuances of each industry, the specific language, the localization of that industry messaging, the channels in which those people live, the buying patterns, their procurement procedures, their financial delegations, the title of the person within those different industries, they're all very different. So for the founder trap is thinking, well, I'm solving this for all these people with this problem, and I'm okay with that because I can use this marketing message. No, it's more nuanced than that, and it's much more difficult than that. So hence why we're huge advocates of focus, focus, focus.
Now, on the capital raising theme, I think it's still the case that it's splitting into a world of new stories versus old stories. And so like LoveHeart AI, that's a new story. It's leveraging AI. They've got a lot of great traction. Hopefully they do really well. Obviously, I've got my views of where that is going to land, but just ask my wife. I'm often wrong. But older stories that have been around for a while are finding it difficult to raise capital. And if you don't have .ai on the end of it. And so we had spoken about crowdfunding, I think in one of the previous episodes, after Birchall cut their staff by 30%. And this article in AFR by Paul Smith says crowdfunding firms seek survival funding after a diabolical 18 months. Equitise, a major local equity crowdfunding platform, is in talks with investors to recapitalize in a make or break funding round after 18 months, described by its chief executive as diabolical. The company is among a small number of local operators of online platforms that allow retail investors to buy shares in privately held companies, usually startups, making money from fees. Birchall had compiled some figures saying 65 million was invested last year, of which Birchall itself was about 46 million. So they were the largest. Previously, Equitise had been the second biggest firm with 13 successful deals worth 10.6 million in 2023. However, this year it's fallen below the threshold of numbers published last year behind OnMarket and Swarmer. The article also talks about fellow crowdfunding business VentureCrowd. We mentioned them last week, went to one of their investment pitch dinners. VentureCrowd has also struggled to raise capital over the last year, although it is seeking much more than Equitise. Its founder, Steve Malbani, launched a $14.5 million convertible note on its own platform in March of last year, setting a minimum raise threshold at $8.5 million. As of Sunday, the minimum level was not reached, but Mr. Malbani said the funding round was not necessary for the company's survival. When he launched the funding round last year, VentureCrowd was targeting gross revenue of 30 million by the end of the financial year. I think that's the one just gone. VentureCrowd wound back its revenue projections after booking 6 million worth of revenue last year at 51% gross margin. It's now aiming for 11.5 million in revenue this year. So yeah, the theme continues.
Yeah, bifurcation. It's definitely playing true, isn't it? Like we've been talking about, I feel like we've been talking about this theme all year. And it's bloody hard out there. I was chatting to a founder yesterday. They'd been meeting with investors for a while, told they need to look like this specifically. They went and did that, come back to investors, and it's like, none, those rules don't apply anymore. And increasingly at that early pre-seed and seed stage, the things investors are asking for founders to look like. And it's no different for us. Like we're an early stage fund manager and getting questions about DPI. And it's like, we're still early in the game and the same pressures that founders experience. One little thing I did pick up in this article was that quote, after 18 months described by its chief executive as diabolical for private technology firm valuations. My reaction to that is, it's not these 18 months that have been diabolical. It was the 18 months before that set those valuations.
Yeah, it's when people fucked LPs and investors with valuations that were too high, then didn't deliver, and now are leaving them nursing losses. Like that's the problem. And
I think, like, I know it's nuanced, but it's important. Like this part of the cycle is the natural reaction to the previous part of the cycle, and we need to look at true causality. It got fucked before in the boom, and that's why it's hard now. But I think it's important for people to accept that. And I think a lot of the early stage fund managers that deployed a lot of capital in that period, they're going to continue to feel that pain. And we just got lucky. I'm not claiming we had some intelligent insight. We got lucky in our timing of when we launched.
Yeah, it's probably still too early to say we're lucky.
Oh, very true, Jack. We're just lucky to have dodged that massive landmine.
Yeah.
Last night, signing docs for our soon-to-be first DPI. No one's retiring here, but to have positive DPI about to hit the Tribe accounts for the first time, that was a little milestone.
That was a great milestone.
I don't want to overemphasize how little the milestone is, but
well, we got to celebrate the wins, no matter how small. We're less than 3 years old. We're 1 month off being 3, and to have our first return of capital and it be a positive return of capital is still worth celebrating.
Jack?
No, nothing to add there.
In discussions and looking at this crowdfunding space, the only thing I will just point out again that I'm just a little bit nervous on is that these are marketplace businesses. Part of our capital and a fund structure means that we are having to live with the long-term consequences of these investments that marketplaces don't. And so the incentive in order to get volume and throughput is just to get deals up on there, have all of the risks acknowledged. But what makes a successful early stage and venture deal almost has nothing to do with disclosure and everything to do with key ingredients that are going to lead to success. And that's what investors have to use their nous to establish. Do the ingredients exist for success? And if they do, have a crack. And if they don't. But the challenge becomes if it's not a space that you understand, throwing money into things just because they're on a platform. I think we just got to be careful. The more people that get burnt on deals, the less future money there's going to be.
Yeah, totally agree.
It's the same with us though, right? Portfolio approach. We have conversations all the time with people. If you're going to come into the early stage, it's not about just saying, oh, I like this deal, I like that deal. By all means do that, but still have a portfolio approach.
Yeah, like recently, a couple of new investors joining the syndicate and actually trying to pair them back on their initial check into our most recent raise because we want them to make smaller bets over a longer period of time and construct a portfolio that way rather than deploying too much capital into one-off deals.
So just to end before we go into some charts, a bit of a quicker episode today, but one of the challenges that everyone is facing is growth. And the big issue of growth is both lead generation and sales. And I'm more and more convinced that outbound sales alone is dead. Like the old school is just gone. And that's from Tribe's portfolio. The people that are really doing well are the clever creatives that are really getting inbound nailed. The ones that are needing to pull their socks up a bit are the ones that they started life sales outbound, got traction, but it's no longer working. And then in non-Tribe portfolio stuff that I'm involved in, again, when I'm having sessions with them trying to unpack some of the challenges, it's our outbound sales just isn't working anymore. And there was a post by Vinny Romano. He said, cold calling doesn't work because nobody has a direct landline or a second mobile anymore. Who remembers the days when prospects had landlines or a business mobile? I'd argue most business decision makers only have one number now, and it's their personal number, the same one the family uses to call them on, the same one they get bots calling to test if their line works in the hope they start with, hello, it's Barry speaking, to verify for their lists so they can sell them. They don't want to be bothered on this line. Now, if you don't recognize a number, do you even answer it anymore?
Nope.
I don't. So why would your prospect? Cold calling is a waste of time. The best and non-invasive way is to create content consistently, authentically, with relevance. You can do this manually, and why I like this post, or you can use mysocial.ai. So this was a really good inbound lead generation thing for his social media platform. It also caught my eye because there's a chart, which I'll share on the screen, and it's a pie chart for those listening at home that has the results of cold calling. It's like this really small slither is an actual deal, like hard to see. Then the next biggest is a political rant. The next is getting screamed at. The next is old person looking to talk for an hour. The next is prospect is dead. Next is wrong number. And then the final is voicemail.
This exactly correlates to my experience of calling our syndicate members when there's a new deal, especially the political rant, old person looking to talk for an hour. Like I just had to laugh.
I think it's true. Like I'm just seeing it everywhere that actually if you're relying on old school Outbound and even Google AdWords by itself as a form, like it's just, you're in trouble.
100%.
Again, from a Harry Stebbings episode, I don't remember if I mentioned this on the podcast or maybe it was one of the pitches, but a guy that he interviewed was a VC and he really wanted to work with certain founders. So he went to Cameo and found famous people to do little 30-second videos. And he said, hey, Jeremy from so-and-so really wants to work with you. And he sent those to the prospects because he had done some research knowing that the prospect really liked this celebrity or sports person or whatever. And that got a lot of cut through. So I don't know if we've already discussed that, but that's the kind of creativity you've got to bring.
You got to stand out. I love this post for the way it's done, and the post itself is a good little case study for founders. But talking about the problem, it resonates with founders. They will feel that pain having done cold call and had those responses. They'll laugh at the little element of it. There's so much resonance, and then the final little hook, or you can use mysocial.ai. This isn't a sell. This is pain with a bit of humor. And by the way, I can make your life easier. I love that post.
Yeah, so my only 2 cents there is like, you just got to adapt to what's in front of you. And the problem now is we're just getting swamped with like exactly the same type of post. It's the same thing like when automated emails first came out, it was really hard to get cut through. But same as cold calling. Like there's all these peaks and troughs of what's relevant, what's really noisy, but you just have to find a way to cut through, and it's not going to be textbook. That post was written by his app, My Social AI. So right now there's a time window where it's like, this is like a really well-written piece of content, but when every founder's posting this shit on your LinkedIn feed, you're going to switch off. You're going to get you're going to smell straight away that this is just a cookie cutter, and then bang. It's like when you see templated stuff on Canva now, like it does not cut through.
Yeah, totally. And this is why founders need to be tracking the conversion and effectiveness of these sorts of things. So they know when things are starting to come off and actually then shift, and they've got to be running those experiments. But you're spot on, Jack. Like this will change again. And you never want to be in the middle of that noisy part. You want to be ahead of the bell curve.
But that's the word, right? Change. It's not the strongest, what's the saying? It's not the strongest survives. It's those that can most adapt to change. And that's what the teams we invest in have to do. And those that are old school salespeople that are stuck in a sales rut, they're not adapting to change. They're falling behind, and the competition is wiping the floor with them.
But if those buggers hang on long enough, it may turn.
Yeah.
I think the big guiding principle, though, is reciprocity. As the podcast we've referenced before said, only a psychopath takes a handwritten letter that you get in your letterbox and throws it in the bin. Like if somebody has written it by hand, you will tend to open it up because there's a reciprocity thing there. Now, is it relevant? So when they open up, there's something that's relevant to you. Well, that's a different thing. But I think in all of these things, you've got to keep coming back to how do you still have the human element that builds reciprocity and someone saying, you know what, someone's put some effort into this. It's worth my time versus, oh, here we go again, another fucking AI video trying to sell me some shit.
Yeah, totally.
I just wanted to, this isn't exactly relevant, but it's been part of some of the stuff I've been contemplating my navel on more recently. So this is Jemima Montag, who won bronze in the walking in the Olympics. I think we've got a future corporate speaker here because the way she communicates is very good. But I think what she says is also very good and a good lesson and a good reminder for founders. Let me turn on the audio.
Hey, Don, are you sharing screen as well? Oh, yeah, cool.
Jemima Montag, you are an Olympic bronze medalist. How does that sound?
That's crazy. I had a lot of belief. I had a good feeling this last.
Oh, come on.
Elon?
Are you serious?
It's an automatic narcissist filter that stops anyone else getting the limelight if it's not Musk.
No, it's something to do with YouTube, I must admit. Maybe it's not Elon's fault because the fact that we're still communicating Okay, I'm gonna download and splice it in to here. But the core thing she talks about is that there's a nuance between needing the goal, needing the medal, and wanting the medal. And the problem with people that need things is often it's steeped in a bad place of self-worth or recognition and drives all sorts of bad behaviors versus people that can say, actually, well, I don't need it for who I am and who I am as a person and the value I am, but actually I really want it. And I'm going to work my absolute ass off to get it. And that is a healthier energy and a healthier place to come from. I think sport and entrepreneurship obviously have some high crossover because they are result and achievement games. But often if people's energy and the reason why they're trying to drive to an outcome isn't right, it leads to all sorts of bad stuff.
Yes, it's so true.
Now, the problem is it turns out Jack didn't need nor want the premiership. Nor did he want to come to your wedding.
Not at all.
How arrogant is this? I've got mates flying down for the grand final this weekend and I'm not even going to be in. I was like, yeah, boys, definitely come down on this date. We'll be in the grand final. Nope.
Oh.
Yeah. Anyway, I'll put that video. We'll deal with that later.
Mima Montag, you are an Olympic bronze medalist. How does that sound?
That's crazy. I had a lot of belief. I had a good feeling this last week. I felt significantly more pressure this year because in Tokyo there were no spectators. Today there were about 30 family in Team Gem t-shirts yelling my name. And you want to do well for them because you know how excited they'll be. You want to show gratitude for the 15-year journey this has taken since Little Athletics. But it's a careful balance of wanting that medal but not needing it. It's really a nuanced difference. So not needing it for your own self-worth or feeling, that people love you, but wanting it, saying, I'm willing to give this a crack and be tough. And if it doesn't happen, the sun will rise tomorrow, but let's give it a go.
So why don't we jump into some charts? We had that big VIX spike and that VIX crash. So is a big VIX spike necessarily a bad omen for markets that future bad stuff is on the way? Well, they appear not to be. Following the biggest VIX declines in the S&P, this is going back, I think, from 1990. So what's that, 34 years. Following the biggest VIX declines, the S&P has been higher 1 year later, 100% of the time, with an average total return of 14.3. I think what's missed from here, though, is often the volatility in the 6 months after the VIX spike.
Yeah.
So the broad message is trying to be too clever is a bit daft. If you're a long-term investor, just hold on. But if you have a look at the VIX spikes, I bet you there've still been lower lows hit, but actually within 12 months, it resolves itself. And why does it resolve itself? I think because when VIX spikes occur, it's often to do with the central bank either fucking around or cutting or raising or doing all sorts of stuff. And they then just pump liquidity into the system and off it goes. Because if you have a look at the S&P 500 now, it's actually rallied 8.5% from its low on August 5th. And we're now only 2% away from hitting a new all-time high.
Wow. What are the volumes doing, though? That's interesting.
Yeah, I'll pull up the volume chart for next week. And here's the gains, right? From the August 5th panic selling, NVIDIA is up 37%.
What?
So anyone that wants to tell me investors are rational, the markets are rational, can eat
That's
my
in
hat.
11 days.
Yeah.
Far out.
You can only imagine how many hundreds of billions of dollars a swing that is. Now, one of the underlying things is that the Fed is going to come to the party and cut interest rates. And if you have a look, this is the US core CPI year on year. So going back to September 22, it was at 6.6%. And then it's just been a gradual, steady drop through 22, 23, 24, down to 3.2%. And this is what have got some people nervous, is that the Fed is going to let it overshoot. And we're going to enter a disinflationary environment, which is going to be really problematic from a recessionary point of view. But if the Fed comes to the party, cuts interest rates significantly, increases bank reserves so banks can get out and start lending again, the cycle continues. That's not happening in Australia, by the way.
No,
This is the challenge. We're going the other way. There's a chart here that shows this is the central bank policy rates, looking at the policy rate of the central bank and what the CPI is doing. Have a look at Australia. Our real rate, right? So you've got to take the central bank rate minus CPI. Our real rate is 0.6. It is the lowest. US's real rate is 2.5. New Zealand is 2. Canada's 1.8. This is the problem. Australia's interest rates have been too low. They continue to be too low on a real basis. We're not bringing inflation down, and we've got unelected officials that aren't willing to make the hard decisions and can't actually forecast in the manner that they believe they can forecast. Hence why people like Philip Lowe say, don't worry, there's going to be no interest rate rises until 2024. And how many do we have? 10 interest rate rises? More? Clearly, you're either incompetent or you don't have the data or both. Now, Japan is actually the opposite. Japan's trying to stimulate. It's got an aging population. Its real rate is actually negative 2.6 because its central bank rate is 0.25%. Its inflation is 2.8%. It's trying to get people to borrow and stimulate, but nobody wants to.
That's a really interesting table, Don. I like that one.
It just highlights the problem. Australia's cash rate is too low because our differential between the interest rate and inflation continues to feed this reflexive curve of investment, wage growth, everything else. No one should have any faith in a central banker. Anyway, there's a good rage blackout.
From a humble man.
A humble half Iron Man, I think you mean, Jack.
While he coughs and wheezes.
I don't know how my lungs are going to get through this. This is what the US market is expecting for the Fed interest rates. So it's saying that 5.3% at the moment, and that's going to drop to 3% by August 2026. So it's forecasting effectively a 2% cut in interest rates. The only problem, as I've shown in previous charts, in the modern era, once the Fed starts cutting, they actually have to end up cutting a lot harder and often end up cutting to zero because they kept rates too high too long. We'll see if that plays out again today. This is a little bit random. This is the volume in dollars of department store sales. And it peaked in 2000, close to 100 billion in the US. And now it dropped to a low of 20 billion and it's sitting at about 30 billion. But department stores just continue to get absolutely smashed by online.
I was going to say, thank you, Amazon.
Yeah.
2000.
Well, my blender, because when you're training, you have to make protein shakes. It broke. So I just jumped on Amazon, new one at the door for a good price the next day. Like, why would you bother driving to the shops? This is a chart showing the percentage of houses in the US that are worth more than $1 million. And you can see from 2014, it was under 2% of homes were worth more than $1 million. And that's just continued to go up and to the right. Over the last 10 years, it's now 8.5% of homes. So in 10 years, a 400% increase in homes worth more than $1 million. Be really interesting to see what that is in Australia's capital cities, because I have a feeling, it's going to be much higher.
Yeah, definitely.
This is the Car Guru's used car index. This is the average price between 2021 and 2024 for used cars. You can see as COVID came along, it started at 23,000. Then that peaked at 31,000, 50% increase for the average price of a used car. It has been falling off and it's now 27,000 is the average price of a used car, which is a 39-month low. Jack, did you sell your cars?
I sold the Ute. So yeah.
Sold the Ute.
It took me longer than I expected, but did well out of that.
So just to end, this is part chart, part infographic. This is the pain of different locations when getting a tattoo. So it's got the body, and then it's just got between 1 star and 5 stars of how painful it is. I didn't realize, but the foot, the top of the foot, and I guess that makes sense, that is apparently the most painful, and it describes the 5 stars. You may cry or pass out, but this is totally acceptable. 1 star is small. It feels like a small pinprick, and that's, what's that, the inside of your forearm? It has just got one giant star in a certain location that just says, do not go there. So if you're thinking of getting a tattoo.
So where my mind went, it was why Don was Googling this. And I can only imagine it'll be to get the tattoo that says half Iron Man.
Finisher.
There is no half Iron Man tattoo. I find bobby pins scary, needles and me, which I put down to my early time in hospital, don't mix. So I could see a lifetime of temporary tattoos each week, just updating it and putting a new one on. But for the record, Aaron, I didn't Google this. I just came across it. All right. So I'm looking forward to the investor dinner we have on the Goldie this Thursday.
Yeah, that's going to be awesome. Duck down there tomorrow night. That'll be a lot of fun. And then obviously I've got a big day Saturday, which I'm looking forward to.
I'll keep Jack up to date.
Yeah.
Yeah. Send photos. I'm looking forward to supporting seconds and thirds in the GF.
That's good. In about 10 days, we've got the Jason Titman event, investor event around the fire pit, which is awesome. Jack, you're coming up for that and then staying because we've then got a meeting with a potential portco and some investors out of the US. So I'm looking forward to that as well.
Yeah, that's going to be a fun week.
All right.
Thanks, lads.
We'll see you soon.
Yep.